At first glance, it seemed routine. A minor disturbance at a grocery store in 2020. A man caught attempting to film up the skirts of unsuspecting women. The store's security guard stepped in, restrained him, and the police were called. Gisele Pelicot was arrested on the spot. His actions crude, but, in their view, routine. Another case of perversion in a small town. But when officers inspected Dominique's phone, they stumbled upon something far darker than they could have imagined. A few deleted videos here, a collection of photos there. What started as a simple arrest began unraveling into a nightmare, one that would shake the very foundations of the French village of Mazan.
The moment her happy marriage collapsed.
Of her horror at discovering what had been done to her husband, filming what happened.
When a French policeman showed her pictures from her husband's laptop.
It was hard to recognize myself. Then the officer showed me a second photo, and a third. I asked him to stop. It was unbearable. I was lifeless in my bed. My world fell apart.
What they found was not just voyeurism. Hidden in the depths of Gisele Pelicot's phone and computer were thousands of images and videos, hours of footage depicting a woman drugged, unconscious, and assaulted. But it wasn't just any woman. It was his wife, Gisele Pelicot. The police were horrified, and they needed answers. They summoned Gisele, hoping she could help them make sense of the evidence. When she first arrived at the precinct, she defended her husband. Dominique, a great guy, she said. How could this be possible? But then the officers showed her the tapes. The footage spanned nearly a decade. Dominique had meticulously organized it into folders, cold, clinical records of unspeakable acts. There was even a folder labeled abuse. In it were hundreds of videos of men, strangers, sexually assaulting Gisele's unconscious body in her own home. All of it filmed, all of it cataloged.
After discovering the video footage on his computer, police counted a total of 92 rapes committed by 72 men, 50 of whom were identified and are now on trial alongside the main defendant.
Gisele was speechless, her world collapsing in an instant. These are scenes of barbarity, of rape, she later told the court. Years of her life, memories blurred by unexplained lapses, now made sense in the most horrifying way possible. Between 2011 and 2020, Dominique had drugged his wife routinely, slipping her sedatives that left her completely incapacitated. And in that vulnerable state, he'd invite men into their home. Sometimes there was one man, sometimes several. Each time, Dominique filmed it. Each time, Gisele was unaware. She had no idea that while she slept, more than 70 men had assaulted her. No memory of the crimes. No inkling that her own husband was orchestrating this horror in their own bedroom. Some of the men Dominique had invited into their bedroom. Others he found online via a messaging board called without her knowledge. But that wasn't all. On Dominique's devices, police found another folder. This one entitled, "Around My Daughter, Naked." Inside, they discovered disturbing images and collages of his own daughter. Dominique had violated not just his wife, but his daughter and daughters-in-law, snapping illicit photos whenever they were within reach. His depravity knew no limits. Forensic experts combed through Dominique's files and found more than 20,000 images in total. The evidence was overwhelming, and the investigation expanded. Over the next 2 years, the police painstakingly tracked down the men seen in the footage. Some of them lived right in Mazan, a picturesque medieval village of just over 6,000 people. Others were scattered across the region, strangers connected only by their involvement in this horrific crime. The men claimed they were deceived, tricked by Dominique into believing that Gisele was a willing participant. Some said they thought she was simply pretending to be asleep, part of some consensual role play. But Gisele rejected these excuses outright. They knew exactly what they were doing and what shape I was in, she told the court. They did not rape me with a gun to their heads. They raped me in all conscience. One of the men was someone she recognized, a friendly neighbor who'd visited their home to talk about cycling with her husband. She'd exchanged pleasantries with him at the bakery, never suspecting he'd been part of the nightmare that played out while she was unconscious. By the time the police were done, they had identified 72 suspects. Dominique Pelicot was not only the ringleader of this sick operation, but he was also accused of far more. Investigators discovered he'd been involved in crimes dating back decades. In fact, he was tied to the 1991 rape and murder of a 23-year-old woman, a crime he denies to this day. But DNA testing in another case, a 1999 attempted rape, left no room for doubt. Dominique admitted his guilt.
He admits that he did what he did, as well as the conditions in which he did it. And there was not an ounce of contestation during the entire investigation, right up to the committal order.
She's lived through unbelievable horrors, yet has no recollection of them. Now in this courthouse in southern France, she will learn, along with her grown-up children, what her husband did to her. Some 50 men are on trial, accused of aggravated rape against the 72-year-old mother and grandmother. Her husband, a 71-year-old pensioner, has admitted that over a span of 10 years, he gave his wife powerful tranquilizers without her knowledge, which would knock her unconscious at their home in Mazan in Provence. He would then allow men to rape her, recruiting them from this website, which has since been shut down. Prosecutors say the husband also took part in the rapes and filmed them. No money changed hands.
As the trial unfolded in 2024, Gisele sat in the courtroom, watching the faces of the men who had destroyed her life.
The trial was to last until December 20th. The victim's lawyers said she did not want to hold it behind closed doors because, quote, that's what her attackers would have wanted.
Et en acceptant que ces audiences soient publiques, ce qu'elle a voulu, c'est que ça ne se passe pas derrière des portes fermées, sans que personne puisse voir comment un procès pour viol peut se dérouler. Parce que ce qui s'est passé aujourd'hui n'a rien d'exceptionnel. Dans un procès pour viol, il y a des questions qui sont posées, qui sont souvent des questions très difficiles, qui parfois donnent l'impression, comme ça a été le cas aujourd'hui, qu'on fait le procès de la partie civile, mais ça, c'est comme ça que les choses se passent. Et encore une fois, la défense a le droit de poser les questions qu'elle veut. Quand on est victime de faits de nature sexuelle, il ne faut pas avoir peur de déposer plainte, il ne faut pas avoir peur d'aller au bout de ce processus judiciaire, il ne faut pas avoir peur de se confronter à des situations dans lesquelles on va avoir l'impression que c'est le procès de la victime. Il ne faut pas avoir peur, il faut avoir confiance en la justice. Et elle a confiance en la justice. C'est pour ça d'ailleurs qu'elle se présente, elle n'a rien à cacher, elle n'a honte de rien du tout. Et chaque jour qui se passera et où ce procès continuera, elle viendra autant qu'elle le peut.
She told the court, for me, everything is falling apart. Everything I have built up over 50 years. I just wanted to disappear. I asked my son-in-law to stay next to my daughter when I told her that her father had raped me, and had me raped by others. She let out a howl, whose sound is still etched on my mind.
Some were journalists, plumbers, truck drivers, and nurses, ordinary men living ordinary lives. But in that courtroom, they were monsters, and each of them faced up to 20 years in prison for aggravated rape. A medical expert testified that Gisele had contracted 4 sexually transmitted infections during the years of abuse, as Dominique and the men who assaulted her had no regard for protection or her well-being.
This is a moment of reckoning for France, and it's all down to Gisele Pelicot, who allowed her case to go public. It was a brave step and waived her right to anonymity. She said that that decision was in solidarity with the women that go unrecognized for being victims of sexual crimes. Many people are asking, how could such unspeakable acts go on for so long, and how could one man commit such horrific abuse and go undetected for a decade.
One of the men in the trial had taken notes from Dominique's methods and replicated the abuse on his own wife, inviting others, including Dominique, to rape her while she was unconscious. For Dominique, the reckoning had finally come. He pleaded guilty to an array of charges: rape, drugging, and violating the privacy of his wife, his daughter, and his daughters-in-law. He now sits in prison, awaiting justice for the horrors he orchestrated. But for Gisele, the scars run deep.
C'est avec une profonde émotion que je m'exprime aujourd'hui devant vous. Ce procès a été une épreuve très difficile et à cet instant, je pense en premier lieu à mes 3 enfants, David, Caroline et Florian. Je pense également à mes petits-enfants, parce qu'ils sont l'avenir et c'est aussi pour eux que j'ai mené ce combat, ainsi qu'à mes belles-filles, Aurore et Céline.
As she said in court, I thought we were a close couple. It's unbearable. I have so much to say, but I don't know where to start. After exiting the police station that fateful day, she packed up her life, 50 years of marriage, into 2 suitcases and left him. In doing so, she began the long journey toward reclaiming her life. And as dozens of defendants take the stand, one thing remains painfully clear. This was not just a case of perversion. It was a calculated, decades-long violation of trust and humanity. A crime carried out, not in the shadows, but in a quiet French village, behind closed doors, by men who knew exactly what they were doing. For Gisele, the fight for justice is far from over, but her courage in speaking out, in facing those who wronged her, sends a message, one that reverberates through the courtroom and beyond.
I'm speaking now not for myself, but for all the women who are drugged and abused.
I have the strength to fight this battle to the end, a battle that I dedicate to all women and men around the world who are victims of sexual violence.
On sait les atrocités et ce que ma mère a vécu, c'est une évidence qu'on ne peut pas pardonner. Moi, vous savez, le 2 novembre 2020, j'ai perdu mon père. Le 2 septembre 2024, j'ai retrouvé un monstre. Nous sommes toujours à la recherche de la vérité. Est-ce qu'à l'issue de ce procès, on l'aura? Probablement pas. Mais oui, il est très important.
Je sais que Dominique Pelicot ne dira jamais la vérité me concernant. Tant qu'il n'y a pas de preuves tangibles, factuelles, quelles que soient les affaires d'ailleurs, il ne dit pas et qu'il ne dit mot consent.
Morgan, in France, more than 50 men were found guilty of raping and sexually assaulting a 72-year-old woman named Gisele Pelicot. Her case has garnered international attention. Today, Pelicot's ex-husband, Dominique, was sentenced to 20 years in prison after he admitted to drugging her until she became unconscious and inviting dozens of men to abuse her over the span of a decade.
Connaissance et l'estime que je leur porte pour m'avoir accompagné à chaque étape de ce douloureux parcours. J'ai voulu, en ouvrant les portes de ce procès le 2 septembre dernier, que la société puisse se saisir des débats qui sont tenus. Je n'ai jamais regretté cette décision. J'ai confiance à présent en notre capacité à saisir collectivement un avenir dans lequel chacun, femme et homme, puisse vivre en harmonie, dans le respect et la compréhension mutuelle. Je vous remercie.